Good afternoon, everyone. It's Ewan Cameron here from Scottish Development International. We'll just wait a couple of minutes for a few more people to join.
Kevin Shakespeare. Oh, where's he? Yeah, he's just got home. I wouldn't even know if he jumped out and if he came in this room, so I wouldn't know what he looked like.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're up to almost 70 participants, so I suggest we just get started. My name's Ewan Cameron. I'm head of the Consumer Industries trade team within Scottish Development International, and I'm going to chair today's session and help with facilitation of the Q&A. If I could ask everyone to go on mute when you're not speaking, please. Many of you would have participated in the webinar that was organised by Seafood Scotland on Friday. And this session is just going to really be a follow-up to that. As we know, there's been a number of challenges relating to groupage at the 3 hubs in the Central Belt. And we went through some of the challenges on the session on Friday. Today's webinar is going to really focus on the export documentation that is required in advance of and in preparation for the export health certificate being certified, and to provide companies with some further guidance and advice around that. And we're pleased to have Kevin Shakespeare, who's Director of Stakeholder Engagement at the Institute of Exports, who's going to present to us. After Kevin's presented, a number of colleagues from Food Standards Scotland are going to talk to us about some of the existing challenges, some of the information gaps, and really maybe provide an update on progress since Friday. So Sandy McDougall and colleagues at Food Standards Scotland are going to take us through that. We'll allow both presenters to discuss before we kind of move into a Q&A. But I would suggest any questions you want to ask, please pop them into the chat box from the start, and we can try and address some of these questions as we go through the session. The session is being recorded so that colleagues that can't attend will be able to watch back. And I think that's probably all I need to say in terms of introduction. So I'll now pass over to Kevin Shakespeare.
So thank you very much indeed, Ewan. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen. So let's hope it comes up, and you should hopefully all see my screen now. So I'll put it on full slideshow as well. So good afternoon, everybody. And my name is Kevin Shakespeare from the Institute of Export and International Trade. I have done a number of webinars in terms of post-transition trading, both prior to the end of last year and obviously following the entry into 2021. So I'm going to try and cover some aspects here in terms of what the documentation and certification requirements are for effectively exporting goods from Great Britain to the European Union. Sandy will clearly cover some specific points around the requirements and build on the further points that I'm raising. So I will try to provide some background in terms of movement of goods, in terms of what is required, and there are some example templates for the likes of export health certificates and catch certificates in my slides as well. So if we think about movements from exports, from what become exports, previously they were known as dispatches, but now they're exports. And the term export means that there's more procedures in the context of moving goods from Great Britain to the European Union. If I just fill out 4, we have a lot of these procedures will affect the movement of standard goods. But there will be a number of requirements here. So the requirement clearly for an export health certificate, a catch certificate in certain instances, a requirement for an export customs declaration. And this is moving goods from Great Britain to the European Union. And there are other aspects that need to be met as well, including in the far right-hand corner, the requirement for a safety and security declaration. Now, today we're obviously referring to points relevant to the hubs in Scotland. So a lot of these requirements will be specific, obviously, and taken care of by the hubs, for example, DFDS, in terms of the requirement for safety and security declarations for moving goods across the GB border to France. And that also requires access to systems, what's called GVMS, which is the Goods Vehicle Movement System, for goods to leave, for example, from Dover to Calais, and the Kent passport. But those requirements are predominantly handled by DFDS in this instance. But we can also see other requirements in terms of placing goods on the European Union market in the context of food labelling and food business operators as well. Origin is a whole different issue in terms of the trade deal between the EU and the UK, and the requirement to meet origin requirements as well. But that is a totally different issue, notwithstanding. Happy to take questions on it. So we can see the requirements here, which are clearly the export health certificate and the catch certificate are absolutely vital in this process, as well as the labelling requirements as well. But we also have this greater requirement for customs declarations, and responsibility for those customs declarations, as some of you may have heard me talk about previously, depends on the Incoterms, the international commercial terms that are used. So if the goods are moving, for example, DDP, delivered duty paid, you as a Scottish exporter are responsible for that declaration, notwithstanding, for example, DFDS will make that on your behalf, but you're also responsible for the import declaration in France as well. We use France as the example here. So on this side, we can see the importation side into the European Union now. So this could be France, it could be Southern Ireland, it could be Spain, for example. And we also have this requirement for an import customs declaration, which if it's DDP, delivered duty paid, would ultimately be the responsibility of yourselves, notwithstanding that declaration would be made on your behalf. So what we would say is that all the documentation related to the export movement is retained by yourselves in one file. So that could be any invoicing you have, any quotations you have, as well as the transport as evidence of the transport document and also the actual declaration itself. So we can see a number of requirements here, and also VAT requirements. And again, VAT is not the purpose of today, but happy to take questions on that. We can also see here in the bottom part of the slide the requirement for import pre-notification, in this case through the European Union system traces. And again, that responsibility does depend on the Incoterms. And the goods clearly could be subject to SPS checks, sanitary and phytosanitary, at the border control post. So, for example, Boulogne-sur-Mer. And the catch certificate requires to be presented to the port by the importer, for example, to the port authorities in France at the port itself. So some factors to consider, and again, Sandy will be expanding on these points, is the requirement in terms of the hubs for a support attestation obtained from a local authority. The requirement for a supplier declaration. Again, Sandy may make some points around, if you like, that additional a requirement, and obviously appreciating the onerous nature of that supplier declaration requirement. So you must complete one of these for every batch of products sent to the hubs. Details of the products supplied for each batch. Obviously the export health certificate itself, the catch certificate, and there's a web link there in terms of the requirements of a catch certificate, which I'll refer to shortly. And then there is the customs declaration, which is probably going to be made on your behalf by DFDS, but happy to take questions if that is not the case. And there's certain certificates and information that must be added to the customs declaration relevant to the export health certificate and the catch certificate as well. And there could be a possible issue to consider around labelling of the fish boxes. So there's a need to add reference to the premises, the address, GB on the label, and the identification batch numbers as well. And I guess it is probably fair to say that the authorities in the European Union, as they step up to checks and have requirements following obviously following the UK leaving the European Union, that these requirements will become more widespread if they're not so already. Now, I've done here some examples of information to put on the export health certificate. Again, Sandy shortly will sort of give examples of where information is needed and required, and these just are examples. So the likes of the consignor, so the consignor is the exporter, yourself, the consignee, which is the importer, the country of origin, UK, ISO, GB, using this example, country of destination, France. And I've filled in some of the boxes here in terms of the competent authority, so DEFRA, and the local competent authority, the Animal, Plants and Health Agency. But there's other information required as well in terms of the export health certificate. So the place of loading, the means of transport, if that is likely to be road, and the likes of container seal numbers, but also the requirement for gross weight and net weight as well. So sorry, that's a typing error at the back. At the bottom, that should be total net weight first of all before total gross weight. I'll just make a change to that slide and resend it through. And a description of the goods. So all this information is required for a couple of purposes. It's clearly required for the purposes of the authorities. France, if we use that as an example, and a lot of this information is also required as part of the customs declaration that's required, both the export declaration from Great Britain and the import customs declaration for goods entering France. So then we have the catch certificate in terms of requirements here. So again, this is just an example in terms of the information required on the catch certificate. So again, name and address, fishing vehicles, description of products, and there's various information required here. So that's an example field 1. An example field 2 is further information required, including obviously the name and address of the exporter there. So those are just some examples of the main requirements that are needed, both in terms of the moving the goods from GB to the European Union, and also in the context for how you operate and the information required from the hubs. So that's most of the points I wanted to cover. As I've indicated, happy to take questions on areas, whether that's VAT, whether that's on Incoterms and declarations. I know that's not the purpose of today, but thank you for listening to me, and I'll pass over to Sandy. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Kevin. Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, just to introduce myself again, I'm Sandy McDougall, the Head of Operational Delivery for Food Standards Scotland, and I have responsibility for the 3 certification hubs that we've established in the Central Belt. And I'm joined on the call today by three colleagues. Firstly, Laurentiu Patea, who is my operations manager for the hubs. We've got Elena Gafenko, who's one of our field veterinary managers, who's providing some management support in one of the hubs at the moment. And I see on the list we're also joined by Ian McWatt, who is our Deputy Chief Executive. So no doubt they'll all contribute during the afternoon. So my brief for today really is to help you identify areas for improvement that can help with the accuracy and the speed of the EHC process. And I'll be finishing by updating you on what FSS are also doing as part of our improvement of the situation. So I think it's really good that today we've been able to invite along colleagues from DFDS who in a short while I'll invite them in to add their perspective. We need to remember that there are three hubs. There's been a lot of publicity around DFDS, but the other two hubs are realistically experiencing similar, if albeit a different scale of issues to DFDS. So I'll dive into really the nub of what we need to discuss this afternoon. So there are really three key pieces of information that we require to be provided to the hub operator to accompany the export health certificate that they produce. Firstly, as Kevin already said, there's the support attestation, and this is issued to you by your local authority. And without this, the hub operator won't even start the export certification process. The way of looking at a support attestation is it's, if you like, a card to enable you to pass go. We've got support attestations for the vast majority of businesses, but we still found last week that some major companies were submitting loads without the required attestation. The process really is that the local authorities send a master copy to us, but you should also have received one from your local authority, and it's your responsibility to make sure that the hub has a copy of your attestation. Now, we're off to a reasonable start on them, but the thing I would highlight is they all have an expiry date on them, and it's the individual business's responsibility to make sure that you've got a replacement support attestation well in advance of the current one that you've got expiring. Some of them in fact expire in February, so it's a really key piece of information that you track in your businesses, because without it really your loads won't be going anywhere. The second item is a supplier declaration. Now, this is a very simple document that many of you are already producing, and you must complete one of these for every batch of product sent to the hubs. It effectively confirms the status of every batch that you're sending. And whilst we appreciate that it might seem onerous at the moment, and we have asked APHA to reconsider the use of supplier declarations, but at this time they are definitely required as part of the overall assurance piece. In fact, it's fair to say without these systems of assurance, the alternative would have been for an export health certificate to be issued for every consignment from your establishments, which would have pushed an intolerable load onto local authorities. So that's the first two key pieces of information. And then we get to the really the critical one, which is details of the products, which is a nice little box on the export health certificate, but there's far more to this than meets the eye on the certificate that Kevin showed on the screen. And this is the main area in which the hubs and Food Standards Scotland are seeking your help, because these are the areas where we're finding a lot of inaccurate information. I haven't listed them all, and I'll get this list of our key concerns to you after the meeting. But the first one I would start with is importer details. It's fair to say that it's not been unusual in the last 10 days to find that incorrect importers have been noted on the export health certificate. This then emerges during the the generation of the export health certificate and when it's presented to our officers and they find it doesn't correlate with other documents that they've got. So, you know, it really is a fairly basic thing of getting the importer details correct and making sure that the hub is aware of that. There's another area that I'm just about, if hopefully Lawrence is on the line, I'm going to bring him to talk about, and that's commodity codes. A really important area to get correct. In fact, we've had today information about a load which has been significantly delayed because of errors in commodity codes. So this is not unusual for find that certifying officers have been provided with documentation that just has incorrect commodity codes on it. I know Lawrence was telling me a story this morning that yesterday he was doing a certificate and he had to do 3 versions of the same certificate because the commodity codes that he was being supplied with were wrong on 3 occasions. Another very basic area is where we need details of the species scientific names. And again, we've seen examples where the names have just been either wrong or just incomplete or misspelt. And it's really important that species names, the full scientific name is given, because that's exactly what a certifying officer expects to see. We then move on from that to probably the biggest area of confusion that's arisen, batch numbers. This is a considerable issue and continues to be a significant issue, where we've got batch numbers being submitted on documentation to certifying officers that just doesn't match the product that's being loaded. I heard again another anecdote last week from Lawrence where he was personally looking at a load. He saw the export health certificate had 2 batch numbers on it, so he went away to check the load and found that the load got 3 completely different batch numbers on it. He also described last night a pallet which had, I think, 20 different batch codes for the same commodity on a single pallet. So accuracy of batch numbers is really important and is taking a lot of time, not only at the reality checking stage, but also for the certifying officers to make sure that they're tied up. And we all know how batch numbers are viewed at a border control post. They're the easiest thing in the world to check. Does the batch number on the product, on the label, match what's on an invoice, or does it match what's on the export health certificate? Any errors in that are likely just to mean the load's automatically put into detention, because it's a fundamental area of traceability. Going down to some more simple things, we're seeing incorrect business approval numbers cited. Again, it's a really simple thing to get right, but we're seeing approval numbers being cited incorrectly. And again, as a customs officer, one of the key things they'll be doing is looking at the UK's list of approved premises, finding the number, does that match with the business that's cited on the export health certificate. Kevin mentioned labelling, and certainly last week we were seeing non-compliant ID marked product coming in. So we were seeing product presented with the EC ID mark coming into the plants. And I know at one point a couple of the hubs were trying to oversticker, but that just started to create additional confusion. So again, please make sure that you're not putting through product with ID marks on that just can't possibly be certified. We've produced guidance, and I know the hubs have put it out to their suppliers on the correct ID marks. So it's an area just to focus on. If you put something through with the wrong ID mark on, a certifying officer simply can't produce an export health certificate for it. And then the final area I want to touch on is really around the numbers of boxes and the weights of the product. We're finding quite regularly being presented with information where the number of boxes doesn't tie up to between the certificate and reality of what's being loaded, and weights seem to be a particular problem in a couple of the hubs, where the totals being given for net and gross weights just don't seem to be adding up. So the supporting information that's coming through, you know, I asked Lawrence earlier on, well, what's going wrong here? And it just seems to be simple addition errors, that spreadsheets don't seem to be adding up correctly. You know, all stuff that with a little bit of attention to detail could be eliminated, I think. So that's really the end of my list. You know, fairly quick run through it. As I say, I'll get you the narrative to go with this a bit later. But I wonder if at that point, whether it's appropriate. I know we've got Mick Devine from DFDS on the line. Is there anything at that point, Mick, that we could invite you in to say about that scenario and picture that I've painted?
So, Mick, just before you come in, it's Ian McWatt here from Food Standards Scotland. There's just one thing I wanted to add to what Sandy was saying, because there's an awful lot of focus on groupage here. But in discussion with our local authority colleagues, the issues that are emerging in terms of the supporting documentation not being quite correct, local authority colleagues and the vets in the private sector who are doing work for individual businesses are all reporting the exact same thing. So it's not just an issue isolated to groupage. It's not just something that DFDS, MESGWEN and O'Toole's are experiencing. This is everybody that's applying for export health certification, that they're experiencing issues of irregularity in supporting paperwork. And I'll pass over to Mick on that one.
Hi, good afternoon. Mick Devine, DFDS, and I've got Greg, our Finance Director, on the call as well. Just with what Sandy is saying, everything that Sandy has brought up on the call is issues that we're receiving on a daily basis with all the different things, commodity codes, batch numbers, labels, approval number, quantities and weights. One of the biggest issues that we have got when we prepare all the documents and the time it takes to put them through for the export and the import documentation, and we'll put it all together, it could be with the invoices, it could move 1 decimal point and then it's rejected. It's all these things are so important that everything is all correct for us to do it. And one of the things that we have set up that a lot of people who we say are complying and different things, that's what we're working on just now, to make sure all the customers knows what's missing and they know what they have to do to comply. And as Sandy said, any of the things that Sandy brought up, we can't move the product if people aren't complying, but we are trying to help to get this all in order to move forward.
Hi, this is Greg Van Homberg. As Mick mentioned, I'm the Finance Director for Scotland here at DFDS, and just kind of supporting exactly what Mick's just mentioned. The suspension of the groupage service is a step that we were incredibly reluctant to take. Clearly, there is no benefit to us in suspending that service. However, the reality that we faced at the end of last week was that failure to do that would have meant the service in its entirety could have fallen down. Now, for groupage loads, there are some smaller customers who are actually fairly well organised and have taken all of the required steps. Their invoicing is suitable, they provide the correct information. But the reality of a groupage service is it only takes one customer to have one error on an invoice, and suddenly all of the preparation work undertaken by the team here locally comes to nothing, and we're unable to move the goods. We simply cannot physically raise an export declaration. Now, at times we've found ourselves, particularly for groupage loads, it's a time-consuming task to prepare the documentation. We can spend 3 hours prepping a document. The load is effectively ready to go from our perspective. It could be either Food Standards Scotland having an issue with the health certificate. It can be our team here locally cannot physically raise the export declaration. and effectively that load grinds to a halt. Now, in the perfect world, you would simply remove that customer's goods from the load, but in reality, it's not a straightforward or quick task to do that, which means in reality, one customer getting things wrong kind of ends the party for everybody. And that, unfortunately, last week wasn't just one customer causing a problem. There was a multitude. Even the customers who were perfectly well prepared were making basic errors, not including an Incoterm on an invoice, stating the incorrect Incoterm, the wrong commodity code. It's not just those who were kind of badly prepared. Even those who were well organised are making mistakes. And the reality is that that grinds the entire service to a halt. And that's something I can't stress enough. We are considering issuing a template to all customers that we're going to request you complete. That could be the key to unlocking the service and restarting things in a manner more kind of in tune with what you were accustomed to previously. But the reality is, if you do not complete that document correctly, it will give us an early indication and an early warning that there's a problem with your goods, and we may be able to pull those goods from the load at an early stage, which doesn't perhaps jeopardise the entire load. And I do accept that this is additional workload for you as effectively our customer. But the reality is, if we don't have all customers kind of operating to the same standard, the service simply doesn't work. And we would ask that you do engage with our team whenever possible, but we do ask for some patience and response time, because as you can imagine, with so many customers experiencing issues, we are inundated with phone calls and emails, and our resources here are already stretched. So we'll ask in a kind of structured way that you present information in a uniform way. And again, just reiterate, we ask for your patience and kind of response times. They're not what we would like them to be, but with so many demands kind of falling on a small team at once, it's not easy to deal with all issues immediately.
Okay, thanks to colleagues there from DFDS. Sandy, do you want to? Is Lawrence going to provide some other?
Yeah, I think we'll probably leave Lawrence for any technical questions with Elena. Just really to round up, I think it's very helpful for DFDS colleagues to sort of give their perspective. But I think it's fair to say both Food Standards Scotland and the hubs are working very hard to refine both our processes and the hub's processes. Many of our staff, as everybody knows, we recruited them the latter part of 2020. They're inexperienced. We are putting a huge amount of training into them over the past week or so, and certainly my operations manager is concentrating on that 100% of the time at the moment. There's been comments about us having a lack of capacity. We consider that we've got sufficient staff. Yes, we need to get them all fully trained. We've got enough staff. We've certainly got the staff that were agreed with each of the 3 hubs in advance. We've got some contingency available to us if we need it. And the whole thing, though, we have to say, is predicated on processing a certificate efficiently with the correct information. Without that, we're all going to struggle. So really with that, I would just ask for your support to your hubs to get these issues ironed out as quickly as possible. And then we can start to see the process flowing as it was intended. So I'll end there, Ewan.
Okay, thanks, Sandy, colleagues from DFDS and Kevin. I'm not seeing any questions coming in the chat box at the moment, but we've obviously got 25 minutes for Q&A. So if you'd like to ask a question, just please raise your hand and we can bring you in. It's a good opportunity while we've got Sandy, colleagues from DFDS, and Kevin all in the call here. So I know it's Colin Anderson's. Yeah, Colin.
How you doing? Sorry. Yeah, we are doing a live crab out to Holland. We ran down on Monday, and there was a mistake in our paperwork with the Chamber of Commerce on the export MRN. But there seems still to be some confusion. The ferries are telling people they must have their MRN import and export number in place, or they will not be allowed in the ferry. We are being told by Dutch authorities that you will not receive your import MRN number until the physical inspection has taken place on Dutch soil. Is there that anything? Oh, sorry. So is that anything you can comment on or update on?
Kevin, do you?
Yeah,
Kevin,
so I guess there's two aspects there. So the MRN is generated from the Safety and Security Declaration, which is made, which is then provided to the haulier, who will access. They have to access the system. Probably the I'm not sure what the port of dispatch in the UK was. But normally that if it's was it Felixstowe or was it Dover in this case?
Newcastle to Mouden.
Oh, it's Newcastle. Apologies. So okay, so probably that's likely to be a ro-ro port, a roll-on, roll-off, as opposed to a big container port. So in that case, a haulier would require to complete the GVMS system to create what's called a GMR. So that GMR is not there. Technically, the lorry should not go on the ferry. So it could be, and obviously very difficult to comment on that specific case, that wasn't provided. With regard to the Dutch authorities and what they require in this instance, technically that they would require they should receive the exit safety and security declaration to enable the entry one. But if it's the same haulier that you use throughout, if it's a company's freight, it should be
it's our own freight.
Yeah. But if there was a problem generating it, and the MRN wasn't generated from the customs declaration, then that's probably why the problem occurred in this instance.
Yeah, no, well, I think the Chamber of Commerce updated the weight on the must have been the C88 MRN. They updated the weight, and then she admitted she should have created a new one. But it was just obviously the ferry operator, what was DFDS ferries, they were stating that we must have the MRN for both the import and the export, or we don't get on the ferry.
Yeah.
So it was just causing problems because, as I said, the MVWA is saying there you won't get your import MRN until it's been inspected on Dutch soil.
Yeah.
The GVS system you mentioned, is that the port-based system? Yes.
So GVMS is a government system, the Goods Vehicle Movement Service. So whoever the haulier was should register for GVMS, so that they receive the information. So it's a government system. There's information on it, and there's also a YouTube video on it as well. So I can post information on GVMS on the chat facility here.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, Colin, for the question. Victoria, you've got a question?
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I have some questions. I'll try to keep them short and concise because I've got a number of them. My first one's to DFDS, and thank you to the gentleman whose name I've forgotten. Sorry, I didn't catch. Regarding the finance, that was really clear and helpful. I just wanted to know, you said that a lot of companies are getting good things wrong. Have you communicated to all that you need to when those errors are happening? And and is no news good news? Because we haven't had any feedback that there's anything that we need to do differently, and we have had some success in getting some goods over now, albeit quite delayed.
From our perspective, hi, this is Greg at DFDS. So we have been supplying feedback to customers where it's a simple fix. In reality, there's a catalogue of issues with most loads. Unfortunately, it's not just been one error. So at this point, we haven't been able to contact all customers with the relevant issues. Now, we have a plan in place to do that by the end of this week, so that all customers should be abundantly clear on exactly the issues they've failed on so far. And the template, to our mind, should help to support people being prompted to provide the right information. It's as simple as, if you don't populate a cell, it should be very clear that you've not provided all of the requisite information. Now, Sandy and several others have mentioned the provision of incorrect commodity codes. That was probably the recurring theme last week that was catching loads out. And the key thing is, just make sure you're absolutely confident in the information you're providing, and we will, at the earliest possible opportunity, come back to you. Now, in reality, with the team as stretched as it has been, I can only apologise that we've not been able to come back to you all sooner, but we are working through that at a kind of steady pace, and we do anticipate that being cleared up by the end of this week for any issues that are known at this point.
So do you, thank you for that, do you have a sort of like a group of companies that you know are okay and that could sort of start moving goods over swiftly? I mean, we're very, very eager to, continue to send goods, and the last communication we had was that you're looking to start again tomorrow, but is that not happening now?
So as it stands just now, actually some of our biggest customers are actually making minor errors. So it's not just it's from top to bottom in terms of size and scale, people making errors. Even those who appeared to be perfectly well organised are making what are, to our mind, trivial errors, but the trivial error is enough to prevent us raising a declaration, which naturally stops the load. So it's a learning experience for us all, but I can only reiterate, we will be in contact with all customers by the end of this week, and we do anticipate things will start to move much more quickly. We're very open to the fact this has been a learning experience for us as well as the customers, so there are undoubtedly errors on all sides, but we're in a clearer place now in terms of the backlog of work is more in control now than it would have been last week, and we are confident the groupage service will be resuming sometime soon. And in actual fact, I've seen some of the questions on the chat at the side. Just clearly many people want to ask it. We've got a review session tonight on the resumption of the groupage service, and there will be a communication coming out to you shortly thereafter around the date for any resumption.
Okay, thank you. We've got customers chomping at the bit for goods, you see.
And it's understandable.
Every day is damaging for all our businesses. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Victoria. I noticed there's now a few questions in the chat box, some for DFDS. So obviously, if we're not able to answer the question just now, we'll make sure your questions answered after the session. I think Ian McWatt. Ian, were you wanting to come in earlier?
Hi, it's Victoria actually picked up on the point I was wanting to make. You and I and Donna were on a call with the Cabinet Secretary immediately prior to this, and it's really helpful to hear DFDS, Greg and Mark share, or Mick share with us the intent to communicate to customers. That was the number one ask I took from the last meeting, to be honest. It's something that's causing significant frustration at any meeting that I'm at the moment, that it's radio silence from DFDS. But I think your explanation that you've just given there, Greg, is helpful. We do understand the pressure you're under, given that we've had Elena, Lawrence and our staff working closely with you this week. But I'm wondering if there's any way that DFDS could maybe signpost in their mind when they reckon they might be out of the bit, so to speak, and be in a position where perhaps much more detailed or constructive feedback can be given to suppliers in order to allow them to address the individual failings. Have you got a feel for when that might be?
Aye, yes, Ian. We have got a structure in place, and we've put different groups together. A lot of the customers that we were dealing with was product that they'd put in that they weren't complying, but they didn't realise what the issues were. So we have been, over the last couple of days, we have been speaking to the customers, and I do apologise on the behalf of DFDS, because the communication from when it went bad at the weekend, everybody was, the simple thing to say was they're trying to put out fires everywhere, and we had priority to try to get customers' product out, and now we've got more resources and more help from within DFDS, from other depots coming here to help us and working remotely to get us to where we should be. As I said, we have got a meeting, we have got a review meeting tonight around the resumption of our service, and we will relay that back as soon as we've made a decision. But on the customers that aren't complying and with some of the issues I've got with them, we've set up a team as well who will go through each and every single the document that they've presented to us, and we will speak to the customers, advising what isn't right and what they can do to make it right.
I think that's really helpful, Mick. And I suppose just on the back of those comments and getting that feedback, I think if you don't mind, Ewan, it'd be helpful to pick up on just one of the comments that have come in at the side there. Abby McKillop has stated that she's concerned about the length of time it's taking for health certification. And all I can say is that, and I'm looking to Kevin to maybe back me up here, but the simple fact is this is an outcome of Brexit. The EU have a format of certification that we have to comply with, and I'm afraid it is what it is. Really, is that the case, Kevin?
Yeah, it is, as you say, the outputs in terms of the UK leaving the European Union, leaving the customs union, leaving the SPS zone of the European Union have all caused these outputs. And unfortunately, the trade deal negotiated didn't cover any mutual recognition of any elements on product and regulatory or SPS. So clearly, the trade deal refers to the fact that both the UK and the EU can have separate SPS zones. Exactly.
So we are a third country, and the EU are just simply treating us as that. So as frustrating as all of this is to everybody on the call, I'm afraid this is the reality now. And I'll shut up now there, Ewan. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. I'm just kind of switching between the chat box and hands up. So Carl Simpson wants to ask a question. Carl?
Yeah, hi, Carl Simpson, Simpson Fish. I was just reading hearing Ian McWatt's comments there. We appreciate that is the case. Certificates for me do seem a term, and obviously the EU has a format, but surely our government needs to go in now at a high level and bargain with the EU to try to reduce some of this paperwork. I mean, with the volume of health certificates required, can a system not be devised where a health certificate is granted to a vessel to cover a certain time frame, for example 1 month or 6 months, and that could be backed up by regular EHO audits? This certificate number would then be used by all exporters. So if you think about it, I mean, fish supplied by a vessel is a primary product with really minimal human intervention, and a vessel might quite realistically have 800 boxes on board, and that could need literally scores of health certificates going all over the place. And it just seems to me such a ridiculous duplication. The system for me at the moment seems bound to fail, and it's really unsustainable going forward. So my thoughts on that would be, surely at a high level now we need to go back to the EU and strike some kind of a bargain on this paperwork and try to get a better outcome on this, because even if we all do follow the rules and get everything right, there will be mistakes, and we're going to have these issues coming up all the time. Literally, when we're buying fish and sending it abroad, we're in some kind of a high stakes gambling match nowadays.
Completely agree. Very well said.
Anyone would like to comment in response to that?
How do we make that happen?
Sorry, I mean, from those of us that and the industry colleagues that attended the last meeting with Cabinet Secretary, that the very point that you're making there is something that Mr. Ewing is taking forward with Mr. Gove. However, previous discussions along these lines to try and simplify it or to try and approach the EU insofar as having a process that's much clearer and easier to follow have not been met favourably, and there is no indication that UK government have any appetite to engage with the EU on this one.
Can we not go, well, again, this is something that could be worked back, but I mean, there's lots of EU vessels landing in Shetland and in all over Scotland and the UK. Is it not time to look at their paperwork, and we could agree some kind of system where we relax their paperwork in exchange for relaxing ours? I mean, something that like that could be done, perhaps.
But the thing to bear in mind is that the actual nature of the deal was that certainly in this period of time, trade comes in from the EU to the UK seamlessly without any barrier to movement. So all the checks that are going on for our product is not happening in the same way, back the way the reciprocal arrangement is not there. And that's a simple fact of the deal. I get your point, and I do absolutely empathise with your predicament there. But this is now in the hands of the politicians, and it's certainly out with my area of influence. We are doing all we can in FSS to make things as simple and straightforward for you at the hubs and the certification process. But my point about what Mr. Ewing is doing with Mr. Gove, that has been pressed, and you guys have a powerful lobby, is all I would suggest.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Did I see James Withers having his hand up there? James, are you on there?
Yeah, hi, Ewan. To be honest, I was just about to say exactly what Ian said. Without wanting to rant too heavily about this, the utter insanity of the position we are in is that the UK government has already granted this grace period and is waiving checks on all products except for controlled substances into the UK until July this year. As we know, they're also waiving some of the checks on some sensitive products and challenging food products, GBNI as well, for at least 3 months, and didn't even ask for the same in return. Ministers were haunted by the images potentially of empty supermarket shelves in the UK and Northern Ireland, which is why they did it. And apparently the priority for us getting goods out to market was much further down the agenda. So it's very political. So to that exact comment, I would encourage any of you that have access to your local MP to scream as loud as you can about reopening that subject again. As Ian rightly says, Fergus Ewing has got a meeting with Michael Gove and ministers tomorrow. This will be top of his list. We're expecting a meeting with Michael Gove in the coming days, and we'll make the same point. I think to add, obviously, to the argument is the fact that that there is a not particularly veiled attempt to cast the entire onus here on businesses for getting things wrong, and they should have been ready. Obviously, this is a system that had not been in any way tested beforehand, and actually government systems are falling down here as well. If you can't get commodity codes for monktails, that is a problem with government systems as well as French IT systems. So for me, the argument for reopening this subject is very clear, but it has to be done UK government, probably to European Commission level, not just French authorities. So unfortunately, I wish Ian or Ewan or DFDS or others could fix this for us. They cannot. We've got to do that job as industry to make those points. Thanks, Ewan.
Thanks, James.
I have spoken to MP or Dundee today, actually, and they are putting some questions to the Secretary of State this week as well. So I don't know if that will be on top of the questions that you're putting forward further to your last conference call. So
thanks.
I'll be quiet now, I promise.
Thanks, Victoria, and thanks, James. We may go to some of the questions in the chat box. So there's a question from Mark. Assuming the export paperwork is correct and the truck is cleared at the hub, what is being done to speed up clearances at the border and get the trucks onto the ferries train? Anyone Is that a question for DFDS or?
Yes, with that, as you know, our drivers, everybody is silent for what these drivers have been going through and the waiting time that they've had trying to provide a service. But one of the biggest issues we had was that the systems didn't talk to each other, so we couldn't do the T1 transit to get direct through into Boulogne, and we had to put our trucks on the Dover-Dunkirk ferry, which they got to the other side, they had to be cleared there, and some of them could be waiting 2, 4, 8, 1 even 30 hours to get cleared. We have got the T1 document open now, but the thing that we're finding is when we do get to Boulogne, there is an issue because everybody's getting there for 5, 6, 7 in the morning, where the drivers are running out of time after they've been to the vet. They've got to go to the border control, and there is hold-ups there as well. So it's just everything just now trying to get goods through to end destination is just very hard and very time-consuming.
Okay, thanks, Mick. I think some of the questions in the chat box have been answered as you ask them. There's a question from Will C. Will we ever get back to same day dispatch and next day delivery, all things going well with paperwork? As if not, I can't foresee a viable future for companies exporting. Can the system cope with historical exports given the added extras now involved?
So from our perspective, DFDS have always prided themselves on offering that day 1 for day 2 service. The reality is, with the current checks in place, it is a much bigger ask, but it certainly remains our absolute focus that that service should return. We do not want to operate on a day 1 for 3 service, but the reality is we can't go from where we are today straight back to the service we all knew and used in full 6 weeks ago. So there will likely be a phased return to the day 1 for 2 service. So we do ask for your patience in that regard. The likelihood is, and we would much rather be honest with you than set false promises, is the resumption of the service may well be on a day 1 for day 3 service as we look to overcome some of the challenges each of you have mentioned with the new hurdles in place from a pure customs perspective.
Okay, thanks. We've probably just got time for one last question. There's one hand up. I don't know if that's someone's name. Oh, it says Nolan Boardroom. No. Okay. Okay. So what we'll do, any questions that have been asked in the chat box that haven't been answered, we'll do our best to get an answer to you after this.
Hi, Ewan.
Oh,
Could
yeah.
I just interrupt because we didn't have it switched on?
Yeah, on you go. Yeah.
It's just one question, which without, everybody sees the problems, everybody's pointing fingers, everybody's trying to find out what's happening. But in reality, it's a question more for DFDS because they see the shortcomings. In reality, if everyone was to do the correct paperwork, if all the checks and everything was put in place, is the hub a viable option or is it not? That's probably more of what we would like to find out, because we hear of all the issues, but we don't know if it's viable. Even if everything was correct, whether all that trucks could go in there through that system with all the checks, with the time scale it's involved, whether it is really a workable way to do it.
So from our perspective, we're very clear it is a workable solution, but with what we've faced over the past week, what we have very quickly recognised is we need to scale up our resource to support this quite quickly. That is already in play, and in actual fact, we've grown the size of our team in the past 24 hours and will continue to do so over the next week. Long term, this is a viable solution. We are absolutely confident in that. However, the administrative burden that's involved in actually trying to deliver it, I think, has caught even us off guard, and we considered ourselves very well prepared for Brexit. But the reality is far different what was set in terms of expectation through last year and the guidance provided by various government bodies.
Okay, thanks. I think either Sandy or Ian or both want to come back in on that.
Yeah, I'll just go first, Ian, if I might. I think from Food Standards Scotland perspective, we put the hubs together, but predicated on a number of assumptions. We are now assuming that it may well take longer for export health certificates, and therefore are actively in the process of putting in place some further contingency staff. So I think it's likely that we will need slightly more resource in certainly one of the hubs than we've got at the moment. Might mean longer shift times, working with the hub operator to refine the operating model. So I think that's going to be an inevitable consequence.
Could I just add to that, Ewan, just to pick up the question from, sorry, I don't know who it was, Nolan Boardroom, I think. Food Standards Scotland is confident that the groupage hub approach is absolutely a sustainable approach to this, and I think it would be helpful if we reflect back on what it is we're trying to achieve here. So we've got local authorities, environmental health officers and private veterinary practices out there that can provide supplying businesses with individual certificates to allow export straight from the supplying business. None of that takes away from the fact that if there are errors in the paperwork that are being found at the hub, then it will be found equally. Sorry, I've got a cat that just absolutely loves stepping all over my keyboard. The hub problems will be found by the EHOs and the vets supplying or supporting individual businesses. So that will remain. But the other thing as well is the availability of that certification resource is potentially not there in local authorities. Local authorities confirmed to Food Standards Scotland before Christmas that they would not be able to resource the additional certification burden for the EU specifically. They can manage to do the other third countries, but not the EU. Now, I know that some are helping, but the volumes we're talking about at the moment are very low. The other thing, that the intent behind the groupage scheme was actually to reduce the cost impact on business as well. And the fact is that we've had some whoppers in the past few weeks. You know, some companies have reported to us that they were quoted £800 for one certificate. Now, there are clearly opportunities out there for some people to make a lot of money. FSS is operating with the hubs on just a cost recovery basis. So the cost of certification to supplying businesses is shared out. So you will be paying a lot less going through the hub than you would do if you were going as a supplying business directly yourself, is my sense. Hope that helps, Nolan Boardroom.
Thanks, Ian. So we've kind of run over time, so I think we're going to have to draw things to a halt. But before I do, I just want to thank all the companies that have participated. We've had over almost 100 people on this call. Hopefully you found it useful in addition to the webinar last Friday. I'd like to thank Kevin Shakespeare for participating, and colleagues at Food Standards Scotland for taking us through some of the challenges and providing some further clarity, and also colleagues from DFDS for coming on today's call, which has been really helpful. We will attempt to get back to and answer all the questions that have been asked in the chat box that we didn't get to. I'd also just like to kind of mention the Prepare for Brexit website that enterprise agencies have available. That's been updated on a daily basis as new information comes in, and a lot of the information that Kevin and others have covered are available on there. So I think that's all I need to say in summary. Thanks everyone for your...
Ewan, sorry, can I just inject? There's an awful lot of questions coming in the sidebar here that we've not really had a chance to answer. I'm thinking, and I'm just wondering, we're recording this. Is there a means to capture all of the questions here and ensure that the industry are responded to? And equally, I think that there's huge value in a session like this, and we've highlighted a number of issues at the session last week, similarly this week, and I'm wondering, just for the next wee while, is it worthwhile us holding another a seminar like this or a webinar like this even next week, just to capture what the ongoing pressures and issues are? I would personally welcome it.
DFDS as well, we would welcome that next week, what we've done today, because it's been helpful for us as well.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm sure we can definitely organise that. So thanks, Ian. And all the questions have been asked in the chat box. We can look at these now, so we'll definitely make sure we respond to all the questions that have been asked. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Ian. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.